Hello boys and girls, today in our World War II series we will talk about a pretty iconic and crucial person in the war, Hermann Goering, the head of the Luftwaffe. He has a pretty overlooked past in World War I that we will talk about, but we will also touch on some other relevant things throughout his life, of course skipping over a lot of small details only nerds like me care about. Hermann Goering's story begins as a relatively minor aristocrat in a pretty dull and comfortable life that all inbred nobles of Germany had at the time. Goering's father was of course old and stuffy, but he was a general in the German Empire, which was a pretty big deal. And then World War I starts, and Hermann is drafted into the army. But Goering doesn't really like being an infantryman in these dirty, muddy, nightmarish trenches and decides to join the Air Force, which was extremely experimental at the time. Hermann decides to do some shenanigans in the academy and gets his superiors pretty angry at him, but they let him continue because of his aforementioned father was a general and Goering was a pretty good pilot. Pretty quickly, Goering became an ace and flew a customized crappy little biplane, like the one Manfred von Richthofen flew. So, blah blah blah, let's skip some boring World War I shit. Hermann scores a bunch of victories and gets around 50 kills by the end of the war. Could be more, I don't really remember, and nobody cares anyway. After the war ended, he got noticed by the NSDAP, which in the 1920s was a very niche organization. Goering was a crucial part of the party, and Adolf Hitler realized his potential of having an aristocrat with ace with 50 kills and noticed the potential of having him as a propaganda machine and ahead of his newly formed Luftwaffe. But it's still pretty early to do all that stuff, so we will move on to the exciting part, the interwar and World War II period. So Adolf Hitler managed to win against Hindenburg and becomes a cruel dictator over Germany and starts doing some very Hitler things, but that's not important to the story. One of the Hitler things Hitler did was make an air force, which was a huge no-no according to the Versailles, but nobody, including Britain and France, gave a fuck. So, all is looking up for Goering, right? He had his own air force, a metric fuck ton of money, and had some pretty good aircraft designers that made the Bf-109, one of my favorite aircraft. Goering was also addicted to morphine and became fat as fuck, but that's not important. Well, it is important, I just choose to ignore it. Let's just hope that Hitler doesn't fuck up and turn the entire world against him, and turn the Air Force into a pile-lead filled piece of scrap metal. Well, here it is, the World War II period that everyone cares about. I won't go into full detail about early World War II because I just made a video on that, but I also don't want to talk about mid-late war because I also plan to make videos on them, so let's just focus on the Air Force things. So Goering is doing alright. He blasted a bunch of Poles, strolled past France relatively unopposed, and then came the Battle of the Britain. And it was nasty. So Goering is now doing pretty badly, as his Bf-109s were trying to escort his bombers to Britain where they totally didn't commit terror bombing against British civilians. That would be crazy. One of his air marshals, this handsome boy, Adolf Galland, told Goering that if he wanted to win the battle, he needed to give the Air Force Spitfires to escort bombers, which he was right because Spitfires could dogfight much better in the slower speeds that the bombers were going. Spitfires are also kind of overhyped, but they were an excellent aircraft regardless, arguably better than the Bf-109s. So now Goering is not doing alright and his Luftwaffe is not really in great shape. But then Germany invaded Russia, and it changed a lot. Now there were thousands of terrible outdated little biplanes in the sky, manned by conscripted children who couldn't drive a car, let alone a fighter plane, against veteran pilots in way superior aircraft more advanced than theirs, decades further. One particular veteran pilot in a way superior aircraft decades more advanced than the Soviet ones is Erich Hartmann, the deadliest fighter pilot in history. Sure, he was an incredible pilot, and 350 kills, even against shitty Soviet biplanes, is no easy task. But Erich Hartmann is pretty overrated by verbose and history nerds alike. What I'm getting at here is that Goering now not only has excellent firing practice for his fighter pilots, but now he has a propaganda gold mine where the German citizens can look into the news and find the Luftwaffe tear the Soviet Air Force into shreds and ignore how horribly wrong the Battle of Britain went. So the invasion of the Soviet Union isn't going that great eventually, but the Luftwaffe is still doing pretty okay. But then the Allied bomb raids and resource wars came, and they were a huge problem for the Germans. The problem was that Germany now got all their oil and tungsten away from them by Allied bombers and blockades, which led to the Bf-109G variant, which had some armament upgrades but was utterly inferior to the Bf-109K variant, which was far more agile and was doing really well in Africa against the British. One of these North African pilots was Marseille, known as the Star of North Africa, a former obscure pilot with an extremely interesting backstory, but now has been documented to death by the vultures or some history-oriented channels. So the Allies landed Normandy in 1944, and by then the Luftwaffe barely existed and Goering was doing very badly. Things look very bleak for the Germans as they easily break past the Rhine and the Siegfried Line after a bunch of very embarrassing Luftwaffe failures bomb a bridge so the Americans can't cross. By April 1945, Goering decides all is lost and decides to leave and surrender to the Allies. Hitler, as usual, is fucking furious, but he can't really do anything to stop Goering. Goering gets captured by the British and then does a pretty dogshit speech at the Nuremberg trials, and then is ordered to be executed. But then, right before he gets hanged, he's found dead in his cell by suicide. He swallowed a suicide pill for God knows where, and he got away with it all, Heisenberg style. And so ends the wacky journey of Hermann Goering. The moral of the story is, I don't fucking know, this is a history video. If you want to see someone talk about morality, then watch some philosophy YouTubers and look at rainbows or some shit. That's all for today, but I still got a lot of videos planned, but certainly not just World War II themed. See you then. Hey, the video is now over. Can you guess what it is? That's right, it's me. It's unscripted Bergie again. Did you miss me? Oh yeah, I'm sure I did. I want you to join the Discord server, okay? I have a Discord server. The code is in the description and it's on the screen right now. If you want to be a big old nerd and then somehow copy it, I fucking know it. It's in the description, okay? Go get it.